Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Licensing Committee for 2016. So I'd like to wish everyone a happy New Year anyway, because we haven't seen one of them since. There's a few things that I just have to go through. If anyone has a phone, could they switch it on to silence or turn it off, please? If we do hear the fire alarms, I think we all know the procedure. Just follow the green signs to the car park outside. And I think with that we'll go straight into the business. Item agenda 1, apologies.
No apologies of absence have been received today, but can I just point out the agenda on page 27 and 28? Please, can you just ignore that? It's old licensing team activity from previous years. Okay?
Chair, can I come in? I was absent for the last meeting. I sent my apologies, but there's no record of it.
I've already updated on Mod Not Review, so it's all up to date.
Thank you, Councillor Fuso. Apologies for absence. Do we have any apologies?
No apologies.
No apologies. So there's no declaration of interest. Does anyone has any declaration of interest at all? None? Okay, then we move on to page 5, minutes of the previous licensing committee.
Chair, can I just add that the licensing officer wants to add something regarding the report?
Do you want to say something?
Yeah, when we go through the committee reports, there is a little bit that needs to be added at the end of 5.9.3. It'll just be a verbal update, just for you all to be aware.
Thank you, Simone. So we move on to page 5, minutes of the licensing committee. Go to page 1, 2, and 3. Can someone confirm the minutes, please? Thank you, Ray. We'll go back again to page 1 for any other matters arising. Page 1, page 2, and page 3. We move on to item agenda 4. It's page 9. That's pages 9, 10, and 11. Could someone move those again, please? Move them. Thank you.
Chair, if you like, because there was only 2 councillors present, I'm not sure if Councillor Graham can actually approve it.
There was only 2 councillors.
If you like, but as I was there, I could.
Thank you, Councillor Kemp. So we just go back again, page 9, page 10, and page 11. We now go on to the meeting of the 25th of November, page 13. It's page 13. Page 14. Could someone move those meetings, please?
Again, I can move those, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Kemp. So that's against page 13 and page 14. Just before we move on to the quarterly report. Is this another one? Oh, sorry, there's another exempt meeting on December the 16th, page 17. On page 18. Could we have someone move those again, please?
I move those minutes, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Seaborn. So that's pages 17 and 18. And before we move on to the quarterly update, could I just say that if members have noticed, for the last 3 meetings, only 2 councillors actually turned up. Luckily, there was nothing of any sort of something that was going to make any sort of difference. So we went ahead with the meetings with just two of us. But I would like people, if they can make the meeting, could they please give apologies or let someone know. But mostly we'd like to see someone turn up for the meetings because it is very important. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I'll move on to Councillor Parish. Sorry.
You do mean the hearings, do you not?
Hearing, sorry, yeah. So we move on now to agenda item 5, which is the quarterly reports, and I'll ask Simone if she'll give us the reports, please.
Chair, before you start, do you want any questions to be asked at the end, or as Simone goes through the report, please?
Would you want it at the end, or would you rather people stop you in the report? Okay, then any questions we can just ask Simone as we go through the report. Thank you, Simone.
Thank you, Chair. So the purpose of today's report is to update the committee on all licensing matters for the third quarter of 2015-16, this being the months of October, November and December. The background of this report is to update the committee on all licensing matters, which include licences issued in the third quarter of 2015-16 period. Issues and findings. Alcohol and entertainment. There have been 5 complaints against licensed premises in this period. A complaint was received from PC Honey Morris in relation to premises that hold a club premises certificate within Torvine. PC Honey Morris was aware that on numerous occasions she had witnessed club premises advertising events that would be open to the public. Premises that hold a club premises certificate should only admit members and bona fide guests of the members into the premises. A licensing officer sent a letter to all premises in Torvine, club premises, in Torvine to remind them of their standing as a club and what they are entitled to do under the club certificate. Advice was included stating that if a club wanted to run a function open to the public or for non-members, then they would need to apply for a temporary event notice. After this letter was sent, a complaint was received that staff at a club were given advice to a member of the public that they did not need a temporary event notice when holding a function open to the public. The secretary of the club was contacted and advice given. The committee of this premises are now considering obtaining a premises licence to deal with this issue. There were a further 2 complaints in relation to club premises. They were both concerning nuisance. One complaint was in relation to noise nuisance and another in relation to disruption outside a club at closing time. Secretaries of both clubs were contacted and advised of their complaints. Both premises received written warnings and advice on future conduct.
Chair, I'd like to ask a question. Where does the responsibility end in regarding the landlord or the club owner in regarding the responsibility of the general public outside his premises, i.e. the fact that it states that one complainant was in relationship to noise nuisance and another in relationship to disruption outside the club. If you like, is that 100 metres away from the club, 10 metres away from the club, or a mile, if you like, or does the responsibility stop, if you like, as soon as the member of the public exits the public house or club in this case?
I think what you'll find with these 2 complaints is that the disruptions were taking place right outside of the club, and we could link the complaints directly to the clubs. Obviously, if the people are leaving premises and they are disruptive right outside, then there is an issue with that premises. If someone is 200 metres away and there are more than one premises involved, then obviously, you know, we speak to people and try and identify where the problems have come from. There isn't anything set in stone in legislation to say that they have to be a certain distance away. It's just once we speak to people, we try and get as much information as we can to try and find out how the people are running the premises, if there's due diligence in running the premises, if they are making sure that people are leaving safely and on time, So in this instance, these two complaints could be directly linked to those premises. They were directly outside. So in that instance, they were dealt with written warnings and advice on how they should deal with people in future.
Must be honest, I have concerns because at the end of the day, if like the patron might be a model inside the club, but outside there might have been a fracas, let's put it that way, which has got nothing to do with the club. But the fact that it was held outside, if the landlord, etc., is still responsible. And so, but basically, from a legal point of view, are we? Is the landlord still responsible for them? That's all. And I'm not sure if they would, if it went to court.
If the incident took place directly outside of the premises and the people were drinking inside of that premises, then I would say that yes, the person running that premises is responsible to ensure that they leave in an orderly fashion. And in many instances, that is actually written into their conditions. We deal with every complaint on an individual basis. We look at everything as it comes in, and every complaint can be different. So it would be wrong of me to say that this is how we would deal with one individual, with every complaint, because everything is judged on an individual basis.
You can't hold a committee responsible for the conduct of people outside of their club. Once they've left the club, they've left the responsibility of that committee. It would be ludicrous. How could you actually prove that in a court?
We aren't taking anything to court. We are dealing with the premises here. This isn't we aren't prosecuting the premises. We're working with them to try and ensure that there isn't a noise nuisance, or if there isn't disruption. We're just working along with the premises, and if we can link a complaint directly to a premises, then in this instance, our officer has gone along and worked with them. And I didn't deal with these two complaints, but she's obviously felt strong enough to issue a warning, so she must have found that maybe the committee or the person running the club at the time hadn't acted in the appropriate manner.
To me, that's it's ridiculous. It's like saying that if there was a noise nuisance outside this building, we'd hold the councillors responsible, because we are responsible here. It's not a bit of wonder that you can't find volunteers who will sit on club committees and all of the rest of this. You seem to be responsible for every Tom, Dick and Harry in the world. Quite frankly, if they cannot behave themselves, where does their responsibility start and finish? I mean, if it's outside of the premises and not on the premises at all, i.e. their land, I'm not quite sure how that we could start to hold the club committee responsible for something they probably are not even aware that is taking place. So then to warn them about what they've got to do and everything, how is that their responsibility? I ask of the question, because I don't know.
I think, to be honest with you, that I think what probably Simone is trying to say is that the clubs, should be responsible, and they should have notices up asking people when they leave, please could they leave in an orderly fashion. If there's a disruption outside after, if anything, as far as I'm concerned, the police should be called straight away. I mean, that shouldn't be the responsibility of the club. I mean, if they put notices up saying, could you please leave the club premises, could you be quiet, and respect neighbours, then I think that the committee has done their that's their responsibility.
But as stated, we had received complaints of members of the public in relation to these two complaints, and as a licensing authority, we are duty-bound to investigate the complaints. And like I said, the licensing officer has obviously gone in and investigated the complaint and felt strongly enough to issue the written warnings. So she had obviously found that something wasn't quite right with that.
How are we going to take this forward? I'm sorry, Norman. How are we going to take this forward, then, if you like, because obviously this is a contentious issue when it comes to the if like the licensing team, if like if like the members of the committee have been fairly vocal in regarding this issue, but I'm not sure if it's going to change anything at the end of the day. That's that is my concern. Sorry, Norm.
Yeah, I mean, if you've got an establishment that's serving alcohol and have no vetting of their customers, and as a result you have regular complaints because of fighting, whether it be youngsters or whatever, then surely then you have to act as a responsible licensing authority, because it is the responsibility of the club or establishment when there's a regular disturbances as a result of drink or drugs from that particular establishment.
I think Steve would like to have some niche on that.
Yeah, I think the committee are reading a little bit too much into this, and Councillor Brooks made a fair point. What we have to do in each individual circumstances is prove that someone was culpable before we can take action. Now, that comes down to individual circumstances, and Councillor Harris, you're quite correct as well, that some premises generate problems because of the clientele that they attract there for particular reasons. And under those circumstances, this committee and licensing panels on this committee have imposed conditions on premises where there has been a lot of noise nuisance outside, and it's quite correct to do that under the provisions of the Licensing Act and the guidance issued by the Department of Culture, Media and Sport and the Home Office. So I think that it all comes down to the individual circumstances and the evidence that we can put forward to say this premises is continually causing a noise and disorder nuisance in the area once they kick out. Then it's got to be some culpability links back to the premises. So, but there has to be evidence that the premises are doing something to generate it. And as you say, if someone walks out and has a fight outside 100 yards up the road, say, and there'd be no problem inside the club, then there's no culpability upon the people who are running the premises, whether it be a club or a pub. But as soon as there is a link, and there is evidence of a link, then it is quite correct that we take action on those matters.
Okay, Simone, if you could carry on, please.
Okay. 5.1.3, the final complaint was in relation to a shop. The shop had changed ownership, and the gentleman who sold the shop cancelled the alcohol licence after selling. The new owners were unaware of this and continued to sell without a licence. A licensing officer visited the premises, and the new owners were advised that they were acting illegally. They removed all alcohol from the shelves. They then applied for a new licence, which has now been granted without any representations. 5.2, late fees. All licensing premises were sent annual fee payment reminders in October 2015 for payment in November 2015. The licensing section are notified by the finance section of licensed premises that have not paid. The premises are then contacted to be advised that they need to pay, or the alcohol licence or the premises licence will be suspended and they will be unable to sell alcohol. There has been a high number of non-payment of annual fee chase up this quarter, 24 in total. This is a very time-consuming task, as it involves contacting the non-payers and requesting payment. It sometimes takes more than one contact with the licence holders to secure a payment. 5.3, Hackney Carriage and Private Hire Licensing. There have been a high volume of complaints received in relation to taxi licensing this quarter, with 20 complaints being made and dealt with. Complaints have included a number of drivers not having proper signs on their private hire vehicles, a taxi being driven in an erratic manner, vehicles with badly damaged bodywork being used as taxis, a driver threatening to throw a customer out of his vehicle in an isolated area due to a disagreement over the fare, criminal cautions on DBS of a driver renewing their licence, and complaints of illegal taxis being operated within the Torvine area.
Councillor Harris has a question.
It's more seeking clarification, really, on a couple of points. I'm a regular user of taxis on the weekend, and when you say illegal taxis, there are some common sense things that come to mind that is illegal. In other words, something that's an unmarked car and he's operating privately and taking money for that. Can you give us some examples of other definitions for illegal, given that you've had complaints on illegal taxi drivers? What do you call illegal taxi drivers in the definition that you've listed in this point here?
To be a legal taxi driver, you have to be a legal private hire driver, you have to have 3 licenses in place. The driver needs to be licensed, the vehicle needs to be licensed, and you have to have a licensed operator to accept bookings. If someone is missing either one of those licenses, then it becomes an illegal operation. The complaints that I've had, and I've dealt with just recently, are involving people that have had none of those licenses. So they aren't licensed themselves, the vehicles aren't licensed, and they don't hold an operator's license.
Okay, thank you for that. The second point I want to clarify is that, for instance, if I wanted to book a taxi, I can't go in Cwmbran, and I want to go from point A in Torfaen to point B in Torfaen, and I call upon the use of a Newport taxi, which is licensed in Newport. Is that okay for them to operate within Torfaen for my services?
If you phoned the operator and you've made that booking and that booking was accepted in Newport, then that's fine. The problem would arise as if you'd approached a Newport vehicle in Torfaen and then they'd accepted your booking. That wouldn't be legal.
Right, because...
But if you phoned them, then yes, that's fine.
Okay, and the third and final clarification I seek is that there's a perception from taxi drivers in Torfaen that Newport taxi drivers have a different threshold when it comes to having their licence revoked, i.e. they only have to reach, you did say, you only have to reach a threshold that is less than that of Torfaen to have your licence revoked, and therefore what happens when they reach that threshold, they then apply for a licence within Torfaen to continue as a taxi driver. Have you heard anything of that, and is it a misconception that from these taxi drivers that I speak to?
No, it isn't a misconception. We do have people applying with us, but from other areas. On the application, we always request a DBS check, so that comes back. We can check their convictions and cautions, and we also check with the Home Authority. So if, for example, someone from Newport came and licensed themselves in Torfaen, then we would check with Newport first to see if there are any issues. And in fact, just recently we have had someone who was revoked by Newport come to apply in Torfaen. He appeared before this panel and was refused.
But is there, in theory, it could happen that we could approve a licence of a taxi driver who was had it revoked for the points threshold in Newport, which is less than Torfaen, and then he could, in effect, be approved in Torfaen to continue as a taxi driver?
It would be wrong of me to say yes or no there, simply because everything is judged on its own merit. But we do have a system where, if someone has points on their licence, for example, that they appear before the licensing panel, if someone come to us with 9 live points on their driver's licence, it takes the authority away from me to just issue their licence. They would be brought in front of the licensing panel, and then it would be down to yourselves to decide whether they would be fit and proper.
One last one. Obviously, you haven't confirmed whether we have a different threshold in Newport or Torfaen. If that's not the case, is it not something we could consider that we match the threshold in the other areas? If not, is that feasible?
Every authority has different policy conditions. Every authority has different ways of dealing with things. There is a difference between Torfaen and Newport. It's not necessarily that Newport is stricter. We just deal with things in a different way. I know that they may have a point system that they follow. I can't speak for Newport, I'm not quite sure, but I know that our convictions policy is quite robust, and we do deal with things in a robust fashion, as you know, because we tend to bring a lot of drivers to the licensing panel for you people to deal with. So.
Thank you. In regarding the 20 complaints, in particular the drivers not having proper signs, are you aware in regarding whether there's been any reoffenders as such, or are these new cases as such?
The drivers without proper signs actually had signs on their cars, but they were magnetic, so they could be removed. And we have policy conditions that say that they have to be permanently fixed. So, in fact, we had 2 drivers that had magnetics, so I dealt with those and made ensure that they were then permanently fixed. It's a rare occurrence because the policy conditions are so strict, and they know normally what they have to do, but they were quite new drivers, so they just were advised on the way forward, and I know that now that's been dealt with and everything is correct and fits with our policy. Okay. 5.3.2, all of the above complaints were investigated fully by licensing officers. The outcome of these investigations resulted in a number of letters of advice being sent to drivers in question. 2 of the complaints were dealt with resulted in letters of warning being sent to the drivers involved. Most of the complaints were resolved in an amicable fashion. One of the complaints in relation to an illegal taxi operating within Torfaen was proved unfounded. This vehicle belonged to a company based within Torfaen and was used to transport staff and customers belonging to the business. The second complaint in relation to an unlicensed taxi resulted in enforcement action being taken. This is covered in the prosecutions listed in 5.8 below. .3.4. The safeguarding training for taxi drivers has now been formalised. Letters have been sent to all licensed drivers requesting that they book onto the course between the dates of the 19th of February 2016 and the 31st of March 2016. This course is a mandatory training course, and any driver not sitting the course may have their Hackney Carriage private hire driver's licence reviewed.
Chair, sorry. What would determine if a driver would have their licence reviewed as opposed to may have?
If they didn't sit on the course on the first occasion, we have courses that will be set at a later time to ensure that everyone eventually sits the course. So if after every effort has been made to ensure that these drivers have taken the safeguarding training and they don't take the training, then they would have their licence reviewed. So basically, as if they don't do the course, they would have their licence reviewed. But we will work with them first to ensure that we can get as many through as we possibly can.
You've cleared that up. What is the timeline you've set for a period of where they must have that course, otherwise you would take action to revoke their licence?
I'm not sure if there's a timeline. We're hoping to get them all through in between February and March. Yeah.
The timelines, the schedules that I've set, because we've set this up with Torfaen training. The schedules that are set at the moment are that the initial courses, which should enable every driver to attend, will be completed by the end of March. They're starting in February, so over a 2-month period, the drivers have the opportunity to book on either a morning or an afternoon course, and there's something like 30 sessions set up, because this is a shared thing which is being done jointly with Blaenau Gwent and Monmouthshire, albeit Monmouthshire's timescales have slipped, so they're going to have to make different arrangements for them, so that's another issue. But it will be Blaenau Gwent and Torfaen taxi drivers who have to go on this this training session, or awareness session I will call it, rather than a training session. So that's set up that way. Then what we've agreed with Torfaen training is that once we've gone through this, we'll know what drivers have not attended. We will then set up extra sessions through April and May to enable the drivers that haven't intended to get on these courses. Plus there will be regular ones for new drivers, because obviously as time goes on there will be new drivers who will need this training. So there will be training courses set up ongoing. Now, because Monmouthshire has slipped, Torvine Training are probably going to have to put on a lot of training courses now, April and May, because they're not going to even be able to start before April. So they're a couple of months behind us. So that means that we'll be able to go in off the back of that training. This is something which is I've only been made aware of this week, so it's with the Monmouthshire issue. But that's the basic principle on which the training has been arranged anyway. That every driver should be able to get our drivers trained by the time we finished all of the courses, which will end at the end of March. So by April they should be done, and they should be. So that's where we will sit at the moment. But then we'll look at what's left after that. There will always have to be mop-ups. It's inevitable.
It's just the strength of the wording where you have mandatory. This is a public document. Taxi drivers reading this will say, oh, mandatory, I have to do it. My licence may be reviewed. It should that not be changed to
I think the we like to use the word may be reviewed because everything depends on circumstances, obviously. We have to assess every set of circumstances on its own merits. But the bottom line is, if they haven't got a good reason for not sitting the course, i.e. they were in hospital having an operation or something like that, we'd have to take that into account. They will be reviewed.
Gambling, gaming and lotteries. There's been no complaints in this quarter in relation to gambling, gaming and lotteries. 5.5, smoking in enclosed public places. There has been one fixed penalty notice issued this quarter in relation to a taxi driver smoking in his licensed vehicle. The driver was witnessed smoking by a licensing officer. The driver was invited into T-Blind Torvine to discuss the complaint and admitted smoking in his vehicle. He was served with a fixed penalty notice and paid this within a few days of the issue date. 5.6, street trading. There have been 3 complaints in relation to illegal street traders during this quarter. All complaints were received during the month of December and are relating to the sale of Christmas regalia. A licensing officer took details of the illegal traders and made them aware of the need for a street trading licence. They were moved on and, as of yet, have not returned to trade in Torvine. 5.7, charity collections. There are no issues identified in this quarter. 5.8, scrap metal. There has been one complaint in this quarter relating to an unlicensed scrap metal dealer. Information was provided by a member of the public saying that they had seen a vehicle that they believed was acting as an unlicensed scrap metal collector. The complaint could not be proved, but advice was given. 5.8.2, scrap metal site inspections have been completed this quarter. The senior licensing officers visited all sites licensed by Torvine, accompanied by the police force licensing officer PC Honey Morris. The reason the inspections were completed in such a short period of time is because the police had been notified of a number of thefts of catalytic converters over a short period of time. There are plans for the officers to do revisits before the end of the 4th quarter. 5.8, prosecution and appeals. An appeal was heard in front of the Magistrates' Court in relation to a taxi driver whose Hackney Carriage private hire driver's licence was revoked by the licensing panel on the 27th of July 2015. After hearing the evidence, the magistrates upheld the decision of the licensing panel and the appellant's Hackney Carriage private hire driver's licence remained revoked. This gentleman has not appealed to the Crown Court. The first hearing has taken place at the Magistrates' Court, challenging the decision of the licensing panel to refuse to issue a Hackney Carriage private hire driver's licence to the appellant. The panel will be updated on the outcome of this appeal at the next quarter's licensing committee.
Chair, if like the fact that the hearing has taken place, is there a reason why we don't know the outcome at this particular?
The panel hearing has taken place. It's gone to the Magistrates' Court for the first hearing, but we're due to go back shortly to hear the appeal. So the decision hasn't been made on the appeal yet, as of yet. And there's an extra paragraph in this part which I explained at the beginning of the report. I said I'd verbally update you, and it's in relation to the illegal taxi driver that was stopped that I mentioned previously. A police operation was carried out in December 2015 to stop an unlicensed taxi operating in the Blenavon area. The operation was successful, and a file is currently being prepared with a view to prosecute the driver of the vehicle. An update on this will be given to the committee meeting of April 2016. And finally, a prosecution is due to go before the magistrates shortly in relation to an illegal scrap metal collector. The panel will be updated at the next licensing committee of the outcome of this prosecution. Delegated decisions. There has been one delegated decision this quarter. This was in relation to a driver who applied to renew his Hackney Carriage private hire driver's licence. He provided his DBS certificate at the time of renewal, and it was noted that there was a recent caution on the certificate. The caution was for possession of a Class B drug. The applicant had no other relevant cautions or convictions. A report was prepared and presented to the Chief Officer, who made the decision to issue a written warning to the applicant and gave authorisation to renew his licence. Licensing panel hearings. There have been 3 panel hearings this quarter. One of these hearings was in relation to a Hackney Carriage private hire driver who had his licence reviewed. This driver had accumulated 15 live points on his DVLA driver's licence. The courts had allowed him to keep his driver's licence because he had pleaded exceptional hardship at not being able to work if he lost his licence. After hearing his reasons, the panel decided to allow the driver to keep his taxi licence. The 2 other hearings were in relation to new applications and convictions cautions relevant to those applications. The one driver had a no insurance conviction that was just within the time guidelines. The panel made the decision to issue a probationary licence for 6 months. The other applicant had a very large number of dated convictions of a similar nature. The applicant explained his past to the panel, starting with his childhood, which was challenging. The applicant had completely changed his life around when he met his wife 20 years ago and had been conviction-free since. The panel made the decision to issue a full licence to the applicant. Licensing team performance. The activity report for the licensing team is attached to Appendix A. There are still areas in this quarter where inspection targets have not been met, although the overall inspection numbers are much healthier than last quarter. The return of a licensing officer from maternity leave will mean that the number of inspections will increase, and this will be reflected in the next activity report. Collaboration between Blaen y Gwent and Torfaen. The collaboration between Blaen y Gwent and Torfaen licensing service commenced on the 1st of October. Officers are already doing some joint working, but there are many logistical hurdles to overcome. The licensing team leader will give a verbal update to the committee at this meeting.
Chair, I know that a verbal update has been recommended. Is there going to be an opportunity, knowing that it started in the 1st of October, to receive a written report as opposed to just a verbal report?
If I can ask Mr. Bendel if he'd like to cover this area.
The reason that this is a verbal report at this time is mainly due to the logistics of me not being available recently for various reasons, from illness and the fact that I was on leave for the first 3 weeks of January after Christmas. There's little to put in a report at the moment. My plan is that at the April meeting, I will be bringing a report before this committee about the collaboration. We're in the very early stages at the moment. I just wanted to give you a very brief overview of where we are. Although it started on the 1st of October, we have moved a little way, and I've started looking at the differences between the 2 sections, how we can move together, etc. And I've also drafted, and it is only draft at the moment, so it's not for circulation, a work plan and business plan as to how the collaboration work moves forward in the coming months and years. and it is a short, medium, long-term plan as to how the collaboration moves forward. So the reason for the verbal update today is just so that you've got something to start off before I bring a written report to the committee in April, if that's satisfactory to the committee. Yeah. Right. So very briefly, as I said, it started on the 1st of October, and unfortunately, the timing, whilst it was satisfactory for all other purposes, I tend to be a person who takes a lot of my leave in the winter, not the summer, and also I had an illness just before Christmas, so actually not a lot has happened because I haven't been there to push things forward. I'm now back in the saddle. I'm back to work. I've started doing some stuff in the last week. I only came back to work in the middle of last week. I've started putting things together. As I said, we've already got a work programme and business plan put together, which I intend to present to both licensing committees. Now, bear in mind, I've got 2 licensing committees I'm serving now, to both licensing committees in April. Now, the licensing committee at Blaenau Gwent works totally differently to this one. So I have to try and get the logistics between the two to work together. Because we have quarterly committee meetings, they have monthly committee meetings, but they don't work the same way as we do in any way, shape or form. So the business plan itself, I'm hoping that we're going to get that approved by both, or it's going to go before both committees for approval in April, so that we can then start moving forward with the collaboration and the joint working. As it stands at the moment, because of the way licensing is set out, as opposed to a lot of other functions within the council, legally we have to keep 2 separate democratic processes. We cannot join the 2 democratic processes because legally both councils have to set up a licensing committee and they have to do their own thing under their own jurisdiction. However, there are a lot of things we can do together. For example, we've already started doing some joint working with enforcement. It's given us a little bit more robustness with regards to resources as far as enforcement is concerned. For example, I don't think it was actually used on the one that Simone said about the legal taxi driver, but it's quite useful if we're doing test purchases like that we've got officers in Blaenau Gwent we can use across here. All officers have been cross-authorised. So officers in Torvine are authorised to take action in Blaenau Gwent and vice versa. So that authorisation is in place, it's been approved. So we've got that little bit of, that's the first starting point, if you like. But administration and democracy is a much bigger hurdle to overcome. We work different ways, we have different policies. Now, earlier on, you were talking about the difference between Newport and Torvine with regards to criteria that we set for reviewing licences. Now, Blaenau Gwent run a penalty point system. We don't. We decided not to. We work on the principle that we will have, if we get 2 or 3 complaints about somebody, which is basically the same thing as a penalty point system, we will review the licence. If they get 2 or 3 complaints up there, they give them penalty points, and when they get a few penalty points, they will review the licence. In reality, it's not much different. Penalty point systems have been promoted quite widely, and several years ago, we did discuss penalty point systems for this council, and we decided at that time that we were not going to go down that route. Now, if it became a standard, a reasonable standard across Wales, which it is not, then we may decide to go down that route. But I think at the moment, what we do here, using the template convictions policy, which is set out by the All Wales Licensing Technical Panel, which is what we've got in our policy, and that is a Wales-wide approved document, and that's what we're using here. Albeit we're not using penalty points, we're still using the similar criteria. So those sort of things. So I'm looking at trying to get our policies to look similar. They cannot be the same because we're different areas. The demographics of taxi licensing is totally different in Blaenau Gwent than it is down here. That's one of the hurdles. For example, here, most of our vehicles that we have down here are private hire. We've got maybe 50-odd hackney carriages with 2 small ranks. Blaenau Gwent, They have nearly 300 Hackney carriages, in fact a few more than that because they've got a lot working in Bristol, which is one of my biggest headaches at the moment. We've solved our problem down here, but I've inherited a much bigger problem up there. So they've got mainly Hackney carriages working off Hackney ranks. They've only got 2 very, very small operators. So private hire is non-existent in Blaenau Gwent. So we cannot be totally the same in our policies. We must not be totally the same because we're at different areas, and demographically it has to work that way. So as you can see, that whilst trying to pull the 2 teams together so that we can have a joint working collaboration, at the moment the main advantages are that they're sharing a team leader, so we're saving money, so Torvine is saving half of my salary, if you like, so it's a financial saving in that respect, and we have a little bit more robustness as far as the enforcement side is concerned. So that's where we are at the moment. As I said, with this plan, when I present it to the next licensing committee, there will be suggestions for moving further forward, and I will just ask you to be patient with me until I get that report to you. But in the meantime, what I have discussed with the Chair and Vice Chair, because they have a Vice Chair on their licensing committee, Chair and Vice Chair at Blaenau Gwent, and I'm going to put now to this committee, is that we have a meeting with the 2 chairs, Vice Chair, and I know we haven't got a Vice Chair here, Chair, but if you want to have someone else along, that's fine, because they want both the Chair and Vice Chair involved, with us and maybe the legal services, so we can sit down and just have a talk through any ideas or particularly anything you don't want to happen, so that we're at least got an idea of where we're going before we get to that April licensing committee. So that's where we are at the moment. We've not moved very far forward, other than the fact that I'm spending a lot more time working in Ebbw than I am down in Torvine. The upshot of that is that you will see the senior officers, both Simone and Claire, delivering these reports at this committee more often than you will see me. It doesn't mean to say I won't be coming here, but if those officers are writing the reports, it's only fair that they deliver them, in my view. But I will still come along to the committee meetings, and it's exactly the same as I'm doing at Ebbw, is the officers up there prepare any reports that go, and I will have a report for the next committee, which will be on the collaboration. So there may be times when I present a report myself. So that's the upshot that you'll see at the moment. It doesn't mean I've disappeared. It doesn't mean to say I'm not taking any interest in Torvine, because I am. But I'm going where my heavy workload is at the moment, and of course with the collaboration, I'm learning new processes up there. I know the processes down here. So as you can imagine, it's quite a big learning curve for me as well. Okay? So that's where we are at the moment. If there are any questions, I'm quite happy to take them.
Just picked up on something that you've said, and it goes back to my seeking clarification earlier on the differences between the authorities and the Newport and Torvine issue. And I was under the impression that when I said points, it was to do with convictions, but it doesn't appear to be that way. And my concern is that if Newport are operating a penalty point system based on complaints, is that correct? And they've accumulated enough complaints to have their licence revoked. How, under a DBS or background check, if they don't declare they're a taxi driver, they've had their licence revoked in Newport, they apply to be a taxi driver in Torvine, and they only have to declare really a DBS and also convictions, which won't come up because they've got no convictions. Is that a fair assessment?
They are required to declare if they have been a taxi driver on our application form. If they fail to do that, then they've made a false application. They are required to declare if they've been a taxi driver before and where. We will always check with the Home Authority, and if we have information that their licence has been revoked in another authority, we will then take that information, we'll do a data protection request to that authority for all the information that they have, including their committee reports, etc., that they put before committee, and we will then consider their application to us, including their history. We've actually done this with Reading, believe it or not. We had a taxi driver come down from Reading applied to us. many years ago, we went back to Reading, and Reading said, well, yeah, that's because we just revoked him. And we got all the information from Reading Council. Now, there are going to be times when things are going to get missed. There are things that we may not be aware of. We have this, we have had that as well. It's bound to happen sometimes because information sharing is not an exact science. Where a driver came to us, got a badge, and we found out that he'd been revoked in Newport, and we then reviewed that licence and took that licence off of him because the reason he was revoked in Newport was quite serious. However, like I say, we did deal with it as soon as we found out about it, and it's always going to be like this. It's even like this with convictions with the police or any involvement with the police. If the police don't proactively tell us about something, we often find out through rumour and other people telling us. We don't find out from official sources. Even the police don't tell us what's going on. If we find out about something and then we put in a data protection request to the police, we will get that information. But they won't tell us up front. There's no facility for them to do so anymore since the Home Office withdrew the notifiable occupation scheme back at the end of last year. The police used to have to notify us that a taxi driver was a notifiable occupation. The Home Office removed it last year because of the Freedoms Act. So the government are trying to lessen what we know about people and trying to stop these things happening. There's nothing we can do about it. We've complained bitterly, but the police are now not under an obligation to notify us about anything that happens with a taxi driver. We only find out when their next DBS comes up, which may be 3 years down the line. When we do find out, then we take action on it. We do usually find out about it one way or another, but it is a problem. As far as penalty points are concerned, I don't see them as being relevant to making a massive difference because we do much the same as they do with the penalty point system, just a different way.
My concern is this, is that you mentioned the Home Office. Somebody's going to apply from Newport. They're going to say that they've never had a taxi. They're not going to declare that they've had that. They're breaking the law by doing, or they're breaking your rules. But what about the sharing of information? Surely under the data protection you cannot share the fact that you've revoked somebody's licence. Likewise, Newport can't. So therefore, how are you can't?
We can on request. It's not an automatic thing. If we revoke a licence here, which we have done recently, we don't automatically tell Newport we have revoked that licence if they live in Newport, for instance. The revocation, which Simone mentioned in the report, which went to appeal, that person lived in Newport. Now, we dealt with, we actually, Newport knew what was going on there because we were actually using them as a resource to help us to track him down and find him and deal with him. That's a different matter. But we won't automatically tell Newport that we've revoked someone who lives in their area. But if they apply to us for information under the Data Protection Act, we will reveal our committee reports because it's in the public interest for public safety. And we can do that under the Data Protection Act.
Shall I move on, Chair?
Yes, if you don't mind.
Action to be taken following the decision. The suggestions and directions of the committee will be followed by the officers. Monitoring and evaluation. The licensing team will continue to review its operating procedures and all policies to ensure that the authority delivers the best service to the public. And the conclusion summary is that the team are dealing with complaints and service requests on a priority basis, as well as a number of delegated decisions and prosecutions. And the recommendations are that the committee note and comment on the contents of this report, and the committee note the activity report for the third quarter of 2015-16. So if we'd like to turn to the activity report, and if you'd like to browse, if there are any questions that you have in relation to this, then please feel free to ask.
Chair, I've got one, if that's okay with yourself. It's in regarding page 31, and it's a general question about the whole of the page, is how is priority determined in regard to what service is carried out first? Obviously, because there's a number of services, and I know you've got a small team, and so basically, how is priority determined in regarding what comes first?
Priority is determined in relation to safety of the public. If you look at the number of complaints that we received in all areas, you'll find that taxi complaints are quite high. So that is an area that we tend to cover as more importantly than the alcohol-based licensing, just simply because of public safety. We have to ensure that the vehicles are safe, that they are fit and proper, that the drivers are fit and proper, and that's how we look at it.
Any other questions that someone would like to ask Simone about the report? Yeah.
I'll second it.
Like I said, you move the report and seconded. Thank you very much.
Chair, can I just add that the next panel hearing is on the 25th of Feb, and we have yourself, Councillor Harris and Councillor Paris to attend. Yeah, lovely. Thank you.
Well, that brings this morning's business to an end. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for attending, and look forward to seeing you all at the next quarterly meeting. Thanks very much.